What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive,
Yeah.
and we are in our third week of this Advent series.
Yeah.
And the sermon you preached on Sunday was called
Joy in the Desert.
Joy in the Desert.
Joy
That's
in
right.
the Desert. Yeah.
So,
We can talk about
it's
that.
going to be interesting to dive into it. It's good to kind of be here for a more traditional podcast.
Yeah. But we last week was fun.
It was
If
fun.
you haven't seen it, we kind of played off. The choir had done their cantata the day before, so we thought we would talk about some of our favorite Christmas music and gave our top 5 countdown list. And apparently we had lots of views, so apparently people really liked it. And we got another one of those coming up, so we'll talk about that at the end. So
Sure.
let's go ahead and get started.
Let's jump in. Well, Dave, before we get started, I do have to say I might finish 500 in our fantasy football league. I've gone on quite a run here towards the end.
I haven't, although I think there's a Monday night game. I think I'm in pretty good shape to win this next one.
Yeah.
But I'll be one game under 500. And I don't know how they're going to do the next game. I have a feeling you and I might be headed off in one of those 2-week deals.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
do the people who don't make it, is it
I'm
like a
not-
little mini tourney for them too?
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
I'm not sure.
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sure that's super interesting to all you guys. But
listen, he came on here the first week and bragged that he beat me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got to get a little
we're
retribution
50-50,
here.
And then you beat me the second time we played.
Yes.
So all right. Well, we got a sermon to talk about this morning.
That's right. We are
this-
in the Christmas season.
Yeah.
And why don't you jump into it? Let's tell us what we got going.
Okay, so we have been doing a message series through the season of Advent on the prophet Isaiah, looking at various texts that Isaiah wrote to the people in Israel at that time, living in a very difficult, very dark time in Israel's history, and writing with a lot of hope, a lot of joy, a lot of love. So it's called Hope for a Weary World, or something like that. I can't remember. But we've been looking at the different candles that we light for Advent, and we got up this week to joy. And so I read a text from Isaiah 35. I'm going to read part of it here because I think it really does. I'm not going to read the whole thing that I read on Sunday, but I think we kind of need that for context as we begin our little conversation this morning. It's actually afternoon, but
That's pretty close.
Who knows? Yeah. It says this, starting with verse 1. It says, the desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will burst into bloom. It will rejoice greatly and shout for joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it. The splendor of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the feeble hands. Steady the knees that give way. Say to those with weary hearts, be strong. Do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance, with divine retribution. He will come to save you. And so we've been talking a lot about the desert as we've gone through this series, because they were in a desert time. They were living in or near a desert and living through a desert time. And when we usually talk about going through the desert, we don't think of it in a very positive light, right?
No, it feels like a void, like there's just a lack of a lot of the natural things you need.
Yeah.
You always kind of think of it as like very lonely, very bland. Yeah.
And so, I think so too. I mean, but we, I was in the desert in New Mexico back in October, and we'll say there are some beautiful parts of the desert, but I sure wouldn't be like wandering through it, or I wouldn't want to be there in the summertime trying to, take a hike or something. It can be a pretty miserable place. And so I think that really is a good image of what those people were experiencing, and it had been a long time, and they were a people who were tired of hoping. They had waited and prayed and hoped and waited and hoped and prayed until they were just done. They were over it. They have witnessed disaster. Their community life was shattered. Their future seemed bleak and uncertain. I think I'd mentioned in both of the services, it was a time of the divided kingdom, a time when the northern kingdom was just about to fall and to another country, and then the southern kingdom would be right behind it. So it's a really dark and desperate time for them. And so, to compare it to our lives, during this season that we're in, as I looked around the room on Sunday in particularly, there were some people that I know are going through some things this December.
Yeah.
There were at least two people that I saw there that have lost their spouses this year. So the love of their lives. So they're going through this first season without it. I saw people whose jobs are uncertain. They're federal employees. They're not sure that they're going to have a job in the coming year, and the jobs that they have are difficult. I saw people that are working through some fractured relationship stuff. So there are some people going through deserts, and I think they need to be acknowledged in the room. But for all of us, going through December, as many good times that it can have, many more joyful times, it's a marathon, right?
Oh, yeah. Just
thinking about like the church. I mean, you were out yesterday because you had a commitment that took you somewhere else. And last week I mentioned in the service, I had a couple of commitments to the conference that took me out 2 evenings on long drives, 2 hours each way, the other over an hour and a half each way. And so that's December, and a lot of it's good,
There are Christmas parties and stuff, concerts.
Like there's a lot. And so I use the experience because I kind of caught on to that when it talks about, steady the knees that give way. It sort of sometimes feels like getting through December is like we're running this marathon and our knees are giving out and we're broken down and they're saying, oh, no, you need to run faster. You need to go run further, And just the things that we have in the church. I mean, last week was an incredible busy week.
Yeah.
And this week is not much better.
Yeah, it'll be pretty busy too.
Busy up until like Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
It's a busy time. And so, we need some encouragement along the way. And so as we read these words from Isaiah, first of all, it is not, I don't think we should look at these words as a pep rally. He's trying to give them
let's do this.
Pep them up. Yeah. This is a moment when God is leaning down and whispering to the people of Israel, look, I'm with you. You are not crazy for hoping. Keep hoping. I'm not finished yet. And it would be years before that hope would come. Mm-hmm. But, I think one of the key points to understand is that this joy, when is the crocus going to bloom? When is all of this going to happen that's being described here? It's while they're in the desert. He's not saying, when you get out of the desert, life's going to be so much better. It'll be perfect then. If you can make it through this journey onto the other side, then, it'll be over. No, all of this is to come while we're in the desert.
Yeah.
And so, how can we interpret that into our own context? And there's this other section I didn't read where it talks about all this reversal language. He says, the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped, the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. It's the language of reversal. Yeah, everything is broken. All these things, everything you thought couldn't change, it's not going to stay as it is.
Yeah.
And so, where do we find joy? And I think, the intent of this passage is that we realize that joy is not something that we feel once circumstances improve. The joy is something that God plants in us while we wait. So, that's kind of where I began with that. And then I moved into this section, it's not, rooted, joy isn't rooted in what we see in the circumstances, but as we prepare for Christmas, is the joy is found in who is coming.
Yeah.
That's where we find our joy.
Yeah, and I think, you start talking about that reversal language and all that and finding hope. And, on this side of the story, we obviously know, okay, we're waiting for Jesus. But, man, that had to be so hard in those spaces in that time.
Yeah, and it was years and years from that. Of course, we have the context, and then we go back, and from our lens of New Testament Christians, we see a lot of prophecy around Jesus and the Messiah and stuff. But it spoke to them as well,
right?
In their context. Hopefully, it did. But getting back to this point of joy is in that who is coming, and so I got to thinking about those trips down to Hartsfield International Airport to pick up loved ones. We've all done it, and you stand there at the top of that escalator and you're waiting, and you don't know exactly when they're coming, and sometimes there's flight delays, particularly during the holiday seasons. And and so you don't know if their plane's there or not, and so and you see these people, just if you imagine, there's all these weary people that have, like in the month of December, been through all the kind of same things that we're in, and they're all there, but yet on the looks on a lot of people, it's just like every time that escalator comes up, you see people kind of stand up.
Yeah,
and
that like new group of people that start coming.
Smile coming up, and like, is this going to be them?
Yeah.
And so, it's because they know that person they love is on their way. And so, I think through this season that can be weary, that can feel like we're running a marathon that will never end, is that we know that someone we love is on the way, and I think Isaiah is kind of inviting us to see that in the same way. Right.
That's good. And I love the idea of, just that building that anticipation. And I think that's what this whole season of Advent's for, is building the anticipation of our reminder of the coming King, but also kind of in our lives, as we find ourselves running these rat races, or maybe find our spaces in this desert, is that we know there's a God, we know there's Jesus who's coming to help meet us in those spaces, and redeem those.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of joy that we're talking about, it's not the kind of joy that's a quick fix.
No.
It's not, an idea. It is a person. And this kind of joy is not naive. It doesn't deny that there's real pain.
Yeah.
I mean, there is pain. And there are people, as I was looking, there's people in our congregation that are really going through some stuff. They're really going through pain. We all have things on our plate.
Right.
But, there's circumstances. That's why I'm glad we're doing the longest night service next Sunday night. Is to take a moment to say, hey, look, we're with you and God is with you. And so, we can find, I think, that joy, and hopefully they are as well, to realize that God is on the way, and the desert is not going to have the final word.
Yeah.
The coming of the baby Jesus is our joy in the waiting. And so He is coming to say, we're not forgotten. Emmanuel, God with us, and so we wait. We wait during these days, not with despair, but with expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody's kind of feeling this, feeling like they're in the desert, and they're also kind of feeling that, like, I'm tired of waiting, would you give them any? Sorry, we just had somebody come to the door, but. I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, I did too. So we're going to need to edit here. So we'll start. You were talking about what would you say to somebody who finds himself in the desert? I think okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so here's a clap to get that edit.
Yep. Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who might find themselves in this desert, looking like they're tired of waiting, and just how do they find this hope in this coming King if they haven't felt it yet?
Yeah, I mean that's an important question. And it sounds like something a preacher would say, to have this sort of hopeful optimism. And I do think you have to lean back into that we're not talking about the denial of real pain. And I know, because I've been there before, there's times you have to show up, and particularly in this season where there is joy all around. People, there's an expectation that you're happy and that you're joyful and merry, and you have to go to church or to office party or school function or something. Mm-hmm. And, everybody is expecting you to be happy. And so if you're not, there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and if you're a parent too, it's kind of that feeling of like creating magic too. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, and I can relate to it. Part of my story is I lost a lot of family members within just a short period of time. Lost my mom and my dad and my sister and my niece, and it was all within just a couple of years of each. All this was happening, and so Christmas actually became sort of a sad time for me, because it was a reminder that all this, was going through it alone, and my family, those that are left, we were trying to reconfigure and find new traditions and all that sort of stuff. And I guess would say that it will come, but there is waiting, but realize that God is with you. And I think if people know, particularly here at our church, in our church community, people are there with you. That's why we do the longest night service. Yeah. We're not denying the real pain and the real struggles that can go through seasons like this. But joy kind of springs up where God is healing us. And I use this example, and I'll say it again. I don't know if this is answering your question, but we've all seen. Had the experience of walking down the sidewalk somewhere or some parking lot, and there's a little crack, and a little flower or a little sprout has kind of come up through the hard asphalt, through the concrete. Yeah. Somehow or another, life has found a way to break through. Right?
That's the whole Jurassic Park quote, right? Life finds a way. Sorry.
I didn't think that was really toward me. But but somehow or another it has pushed through. And joy is like that. Somehow or another it will break through. Yeah. That's Isaiah's message. In that hard desert, with all the hot sun, somehow or another he makes this, this promise that these crocuses, which you don't expect to see, are going to break through, burst forth, he says. Yeah. And I pointed out in the service yesterday, this language that's used there is really kind of abrupt. I use the word violent. I don't know if that was a good word, but the word there, it means that, it's going to, it breaks open, it disrupts the drought, it insists on life. And so, that is our promise to wait for, and I know the waiting is difficult, and I want people to feel heard that their pain is real. Yeah. But there's a God that stays with us, particularly in that time. And what I discovered when I went through it is that's something that's very real too. Yeah. That somehow or another in the deep dark December, that there is a God that came to earth, and Emmanuel, God with us, and Amen. Reclaiming that and experiencing it anew, or maybe for the first time. It's not there. There's no easy answers for that. There's not any spiritual jewel I can pull out of my pocket and say, "Hey, just do this."
Yeah, read this verse; it'll be all good.
Do this, and it'll be better.
Right.
That's bull. I mean, it's a hard journey, and Israel in this. That Isaiah is writing to, and they're definitely going through that. Yeah. And so, Isaiah is being encouraging to them, hopefully, and hopefully Isaiah can be encouraging to those folks that are going through it. Yeah. So, let me close with like the three main points that I made on Sunday. One was how does this connect with us this Advent? And I think the first would say is that your desert, and maybe this will speak to the people you were talking about,
Yeah.
your desert is not God-forsaken ground. It is not God-forsaken. Whatever you're waiting for, whether it's healing, direction, reconciliation, just peace, your desert is the exact place that God promises to make life bloom. When I said at the top of the podcast, one of my first points is that this is not when they got on the other side of the desert. This is why they're
In the middle of it.
In the middle of it.
Yeah.
This is when it's coming. And so just, be on the lookout. The second one is that, and again, another good point to, the circumstances you were speaking of. Joy is not something you manufacture.
Yeah.
And you can't fake it. I think you can fake a happy smile and a happy face. I mean, you can do that.
Yeah.
But the joy that comes from God is not something, it's something God's going to grow inside of you.
Yeah.
And God will. I mean, even
And it's not dependent on the highs and lows necessarily. It's just something that kind of seeps in, and not to mean that you're going to always be happy in the hard times, but there's just something that it's hard to put into words fully, but it's just like there's something a little different in there.
And it comes in unexpected places.
Yeah.
I mean, as unexpected is that, the King of the universe came to the world not as a overpowering emperor or conqueror, that sort of thing, but came in as a fragile little baby.
Yeah.
That was love and joy in an unexpected place. In just the same way, joy comes to us in places we aren't looking for. Crocuses in the desert, walking down the sidewalk and seeing a flower bloom,
Right.
I've been hiking up in the mountains before in places where, it's above the tree line, and just being amazed to see, I got these flowers here.
Yeah.
Not expecting to see them. And I think that's kind of part of it is, not expecting to find or see life where we sometimes discover it. So, it comes in unexpected places. And then my final point was this, that Advent is an invitation to look up with expectation. Joy is not going to come from pretending everything is fine, but from remembering that God is coming.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we do in Advent, yes, we're looking forward to the baby Jesus and, the celebration of God's first arrival, but we are also cognizant of the fact that, there's a promise that Christ will return.
Yeah.
God will reign forever and ever.
Yep.
And so we look forward to that, and we've been waiting a long time there too, but we still wait with this expectancy, with this hope.
Do you think it's easier to wait on our side than it was on their side? That's a weird question, I know, but it just kind of hit me. I think, thinking about it in terms of well, we've got so much more of the story, and we saw how God revealed himself and did what he did. Maybe it's a little easier for us to kind of still have faith and believe in what's coming.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very easy on this side to be critical of the way people reacted, before we knew what we knew.
Yeah.
And the fact is that so many of us, all of us at some point, we know what we know, and yet we don't live as people with hope and joy.
Yeah.
We are so easily burdened and weighed down.
That's a good point.
By the world around us. And so even though we know the right answer,
Yeah.
lots of times we don't live like it. We think, yeah, I know God's word says this, but that's not really the way the world works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I will be anxious. I will stress out. I will give in to this, that, or the other thing. So,
Yeah.
but God keeps His promises.
Yep.
And they come in unexpected times, and lots of times they're waiting. They don't come quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, they will come. And so, we grow in the waiting. So, yeah. So that was Advent 3. As we lit the candle of joy. And we've got one more on Sunday. It's a candle of love. And so hope folks will be here for that one.
Yeah.
As we finish out Isaiah, we're going back. We're in Isaiah 35. We're going back to Isaiah 9 and looking at the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. And for unto us a child is born, a son is given. So we'll be looking at that text on as we're together on Sunday. And then next week for the podcast, we got another special Christmas edition. So, yeah, that'll be fun. So by the time you're seeing the podcast next week, it's going to be the 23rd or the 24th. It might be right up against
Christmas Eve, I
so,
think.
So hopefully it's something you can see and might give you a laugh or, a light time during the holidays.
Yeah, talking about our movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll come out with enough time that you could watch one of them.
I was going to say this though. There was at least an artist that I left off the list last week, and I actually sent you.
You introduced them to me this morning.
So I have a little space of joy that's coming up for me this week. I'm going to be seeing Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. And so Bella Fleck is the best banjo player in the world. And so when you hear banjo, you think bluegrass.
Bluegrass, easy.
Stuff. Like I played it for you. What would you say it is?
I don't know. You kind of came back and were like, it's kind of bluegrass adjacent. And I kind of agree with that, but it's just so like fast paced. It's so
jazz.
It was cool. Jazz, a little jazzy.
Sax player in there, great bass player, percussionist, which lots of times you don't have in that. But anyway, I'm singing that on Thursday night. Sing his Christmas tour. So
that'll be cool.
But just throw this as a little addendum to our podcast last week. If you haven't ever seen or heard of Bella Fleck, definitely go on YouTube and
check it out.
Google him, particularly his Christmas songs. I think you'll get a rise out of that. It's fun.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to add to the comment section below on the Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching this, and just a quick reminder too, Dave mentioned our longest night service a little bit earlier. Just if that is something, you kind of feel like you're in that desert, in that space, Sunday evening, there'll be a service here, right? Yeah. Sunday evening, 21st.
Yeah, 21st at 6 o'clock. Yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, I know that there are most people that watch or listen to this podcast are church members, but I do know we have some folks that watch it actually pretty faithfully that aren't.
Yeah.
And so know that you're invited, or maybe you don't live in this area. A lot of churches have those longest night services. So just look around, because if you're walking through the desert right now, if you're going through a struggle this December, I have found that to be a really holy, sacred time. I look forward to that service every week, every year. I need it myself. I needed it particularly in times when I was going through that kind of pain. But even today, as I just think of, of the life and the world that we're living in, I think it's a real needed service for us right now.
Well, thank you for that. And Dave, do you have anything to add here at the end?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
All right.